Hello, welcome to this episode of Martial Truth. My interview with David Black. David Black is a martial artist out of Australia and filmmaker. I'll include a link to his IMDb page. He's someone who got back into martial arts at a later age and decided to write about those experiences in an article that appeared in Tao magazine. And now follow that up with a documentary. And that documentary is going to be free. It's going to be available to everybody on his YouTube page, which I'll put a link to the trailer. The documentary is probably going to be finished in a couple of weeks. So when it's finished, I'll make an announcement and share it around, and you'll be able to watch it. And basically, it's about people beginning their training in martial arts after 50 or returning after a long layoff, all right? And we know those of us have dojos, we've all seen people like that. So it's an interesting topic. I thought the interview was fun. David's a good guy. I had a lot of fun talking to him, so I hope you like it too. All right, as always, please click that like button, subscribe, consider becoming a member. Putting more and more stuff up there. I just started the series on San Shin, part 1. I included it for free for the subscribers. The future parts will only be available to members. Only previews will be available to the subscribers. So if you want to see those, you'll have to become a member. Sorry, just the way it is. Members pay the $2.99 a month. They get extra stuff. There's deep dives and all the Ishinru kata up there, some of the Matayoshi kata, Chen style Taiji stuff, feeding crane, and I'm adding things every week. Okay, and all those videos that the members is all commercial free. So there's no commercials on any of those videos. So you can watch them with no commercials, including these podcasts. And these podcasts, they get 2 or 3 days early. All right. So just thought I'd mention that. So without further ado, here's my interview with David Black. David Black, welcome to the Martial Truth Podcast. So why don't you introduce yourself and give the viewers an idea of why you're here and some of the projects you've been working on.
Oh, well, thanks for having me on the podcast, and hi to all your viewers. My background is that, like a lot of guys my age, and I'm 60 now, I did martial arts as a kid and as a teen. And I never forgot about martial arts, never lost my love, always looked at magazines, but life gets in the way. So when the lockdowns happened, I'm in Melbourne, and Melbourne was the most locked down city in the world. For 2 years almost, I think we got maybe 3 or 4 weeks where we were allowed out the front door and could walk to the park. And it was during that time I was cleaning up my place. I found my old judo suit and I threw it away. It's always when you throw something away that you know you're going to go back to it. And I was 100% sure I was never going back to martial arts, but I hadn't lost my love. Well, I fell into martial arts in the most curious way. Actually, before I say that, I should say I did actually try to go back to martial arts a few times over the years. But there either wasn't the time, or I didn't have the money, or I had some bad experiences walking into some clubs, which there are still bad experiences that you can have. Majority of clubs are fantastic, but you get 1 or 2 dodgy ones. So, yeah, I really was tempted to go back, but knew that I was now too old and it's too late. So anyway, what happened was I was at International Buddha Day in the city in Melbourne, and I was with my girlfriend who's Chinese, and there was a lion dance. I never saw her go so crazy before. The smile in her face, and she's chasing the lion around. And I said to her, "Do you want to learn lion dancing?" She said, "Yep." So online, I got her to make the calls. She called a lion dancing place. What I didn't know is that the basis for lion dancing for the majority of places in the West is Jiaoga Kung Fu.
Right.
Every move they make with the lion, it's a Jiaoga Kung Fu move. And if you watch the feet, you'll see that they're doing the stances.
Right.
So we went along to the Jiaoga Kung Fu. We went along to the lion dancing. And at that point, I still had some injuries. I had a shoulder injury that I got during the lockdown from leaning forward too long with the mouse. I had a lot of injuries. So, and it was the dead of winter in Melbourne. So I looked like an old man. I'm like all rugged up, sitting at the back, watching her and seeing that they're doing Kung Fu. But having this white guy in an Asian place sitting back and watching, it's sort of creepy. And they kept asking me, will you do the Jiaoge? Will you do the Kung Fu? Eventually I said yes. And at the very first lesson that I did, I was exhausted. I was like covered in sweat. And I thought, oh, I'm not going to be able to keep up with these people. And on my way home from work, I passed Six Harmonies Kung Fu in St Kilda. And so I walked up the steps, asked them about it, and started Kung Fu there.
Okay.
And I thought, if I can do Kung Fu there 3 times a week, which is what you do as a beginner, I'm going to be learning these stances. I'm going to be learning these moves. I'll be able to keep up with the rest. Well, they said they're all inclusive. After 6 months, they asked us not to come back. They said they wanted to keep the space on the mat for people that were learning faster and were soon to be performing or whatever. But I had now 6 months of training at Six Harmonies. And I swear I almost didn't make it through the first fortnight. You read the article I wrote about martial arts?
Yes, I read the article. Yeah, it was excellent.
The reason for writing the article is because of every single mistake that I made. I think I made them all. The first thing that happened was a lot of people started up martial arts when the lockdowns finished. So they had a massive influx of new people.
Yeah, we had the same in the States. And just to let you know what happened with us, I was still in New York at the time, and New York had lockdowns just like Melbourne did, not to that extent, but we decided literally we were closed for about 10 days, and we looked at each other and said, we're opening up. And I lived in a town that had its own separate government. I mentioned to the police commissioner and the mayor, I said, listen, I'm opening up my business. I can't stay shut down. They said, do whatever you want. We're not going to bother you. So we opened up and started classes, no masks, training. Nobody got COVID. Nobody got sick. And we firmly believe it was because we were exercising. We were working out and keeping our bodies healthy all throughout COVID. So we were literally only closed 10 days. And people were looking at us like they're looking in the place like those people are working out. They're not wearing masks. Nobody gets sick. So again, I hear where you're coming from, because the lockdowns, I mean, we lost in the county I live in and lived in. Now I'm in Arizona, but when I was in New York, the county I lived in, they lost over 60 schools. Over 60 schools closed their doors because of the lockdown. And then we saw the same thing once everything started to slowly open up. We saw an influx and people coming in and looking to do some type of exercise, trying to get back to a normal type of existence. So go ahead, continue with your story. I just wanted to mention that, so you know, we experienced some of the same things, exact things you were experiencing. So
oh yeah, my teacher started doing online lessons during that time. I got to look back via the Facebook page to look at the history, because I just felt so much in love with the school,
right.
Which I still am. But it didn't stop me from making a lot of mistakes. So there's all of these guys in their 20s and 30s, some of them that went to the gym or whatever. And the first thing they do is they start with a run around the mat. I was used to where my head hadn't changed from the time when I did judo as a kid. So I was in the state squad training. I'm used to being the best, not the worst.
Right.
And I still am the worst. It's age. It's
right.
another yeah. But yeah, I had a stitch within about 6-7 rounds around the mat. We've got a good sized mat. And it wasn't for 3 months that somebody actually said to me, hey, you can pace yourself, which,
right.
Oh, thank God they did. I didn't know that the gradings were 3 hours long. If they told me, I actually wouldn't have turned up. So I turned up and I'm about to start. And a guy who was, I think he's about 45 or 50, just said, you know, David, it's 3 hours ahead of you. You're allowed to pace yourself. And I just stayed at the same pace as him. I realize nowadays you actually can pace yourself.
Right. Well, yeah, you have to, right? I mean, like I find it interesting. In the West, these gradings and tests seem to be very long. But I've tested in Okinawa and I've tested in Japan, and the gradings are not long. Now, there are some styles of karate like Kyokushinkai that does ridiculous grading, and people get hurt at every single one of them, which I am not in agreement with. But I know when I tested in Japan and Okinawa, the tests were not long and they weren't brutal and they weren't crazy, right? But for some reason, I know when I tested for black belt in the school I came up in, it was the same type of thing. It was like a 3 hour test. And I'm not kidding. I have photos of myself after the test. And now keep in mind, I'm about 21. I'm in top condition.
Yeah,
I'm green. I literally have photos of myself where my skin color is green at the end of the test. I was so exhausted. I laid down on a bench. I had trouble literally standing up. And when I went to Okinawa and I tested the first time there, I literally was this close to saying, that's it. Like, where's the brutality? Like, where's the. And that was it. And there was none of that. And I was like, okay. So, like, when I do my tests now, my black belt tests normally run maybe, 45 minutes, an hour, about that. And again, depending on the candidate, if the guy's older, well, what do? We pace it different. If the guy's 21 and he's lean and mean and in tremendous shape, well, then we put him through the ringer a little bit more. So that's one of the things I learned traveling in Japan is that a bunch of my teachers, including Kichiro Shimabuku, the headmaster of Ishinru, told me that everyone's different. So you have to adjust the training to everyone. But I see in the West that a lot of people don't do that. Like they have this one size fits all approach. And that's why I think a lot of people our age, because I'm 60 also, I'll be 61 in a couple of weeks. A lot of people our age get turned off. Okay. Yeah, I'm 60. I can't keep up with a 21-year-old. I can't do all this physical calisthenics and everything that he's going to do. Okay, you expect me to do that? Okay, well then I can't train here. I'm not going to be able to do it. And I think they lose out on a lot because I think having like in my dojo, we have a wide range of age. In this dojo right now in Arizona, I have a 12-year-old that's in my adult class, and I have up to 71. Okay. And, in between. And, everyone can train, but again, it's adjusted based on age. The 12-year-old, the 15-year-old, the 18-year-old, those I push harder, right? But if you're older, you can't do that because then the injuries start. And once the injuries start, you start on that path, it becomes a huge problem. So I know exactly what you're talking about in terms of, yeah, we have to pace ourselves. We have to change the way we train as we get older. And as an instructor, if I don't recognize that, I don't think my school will last. I think it creates big problems.
well, I think there is a massive market for people that are mature age. And if a few more clubs start to understand that, they're going to be thriving. I'm
Right.
not kidding. When I first started talking about the documentary Eternal Warriors with my girlfriend, we're on a tram. we're
Okay.
just we were on the tram, and I suppose maybe we were talking a bit loudly. I don't know. I'm a little bit deaf, so I sometimes talk a bit too loudly. And she thought that there was a guy making fun of us sitting a couple of seats up. And I stopped and I watched him. I didn't feel any bad vibes from him at
Right.
all. And he's suddenly doing all of this stuff. And the more I watched, I said to it, no, that's a form. This
Right.
man is actually very good.
Right.
And so I talked to him, and he was friendly as anything. And his story wasn't too different to mine. He'd done Kung Fu when he was a kid. He'd actually done a couple of styles, but now 40 years had gone past. He'd never stopped thinking about it. He could still, I don't know what he was going to do with his legs. He was sitting down, but he still
Right.
had all of the hand movements. It was like poetry. And I said, well, why don't you go back? And he said, oh, I can't. I've got emphysema. Um, it's not a good excuse.
Right.
He had the fitness. I know exactly what his fear was. It was the same as mine. I had just gotten over cancer. Well, I'd gotten over cancer about 5 years before, but for
Okay.
some reason, it took me quite some time to just to get my energy back.
Yeah.
I mean, year one, I went out to New Year's Eve at a pub down the road and I lasted 15 minutes. Year two, I lasted a half an hour. Year three, I lasted an hour. So I don't know why it took me 5 years to get my energy back. So jumping into Kung Fu it was now 58. I'm just over
Right.
2 years into it. Jumping into it was crazy, but it was an accident. It was due to the line dancing. But yeah, the reason for the documentary coming up comes from the article. First, I did the article because I'd made all of the mistakes that nobody told me you could make. It was 2 weeks into training where I got muscle failure. I tried to get up the stairs at the club and I couldn't get my legs up. Now, I walked 45 minutes to work and 45 minutes back. I had no idea that was going to happen because I just walked for an hour and a half that day. So muscle failure happened. I had to look it up on the internet. What is happening to me? Every time something happened, I had to look it up on the internet. What
Right.
is happening to me? When I started looking up articles about mature age people doing martial arts, oh, the bullshit detector went off. Everyone's trying to get mature age students in. So they're saying, oh, we're all inclusive, come along. But when I read the stories, they're not telling the truth that, yes, you can do it. I would recommend you do it. But guess what? There's a number of things you'll need to know to avoid these mistakes. There's nobody listing them because I suppose it makes you look like a loser if you come along and say, I made all of these mistakes.
So the other problem that I've noticed, so I'm doing martial arts now. Before you know, it'll be 46 years. I've never taken a break, and I teach and train a lot of different arts. I've been to China, Japan, Okinawa, and Japan numerous times. The first time I went to Okinawa, I asked the headmaster of Ishinru about older people training, and I said to him, I said, Sensei, what if an older person joins the dojo? And his response was different. He says, it's different, Mike. You have to adjust it to that person, right? And I said, okay. I was 29 at the time, right? And I asked him, well, what if a woman joins the dojo? And he says, well, it's different, because my first instructor said, oh, a woman has to be as strong as a man. And that's ridiculous. Not every man is as strong as the man next to him, right? So one of the things I realized, and being in this as long as I am, is a lot of the early pioneers, they were very young men when they were in Japan and Okinawa and China training. So when they're young, obviously they're going really hard. They're really fit. A lot of them were military guys and they're hard. Rah, 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 and they stay there a short time and now they come back and they start teaching, but they don't go back. And those guys that never went back never learn that you have to change the way you train. So for instance, I went to Fukuoka and I was training with my jujitsu sensei. And I said to him, because jujitsu, you're taking the falls, right? So I don't do the rolling around on the floor jujitsu. I do like judo where you're throwing and doing these
Yeah.
big falls. Okay. So I said to my jujitsu sensei, I said, Sensei, what if an older person, like I've had guys like back at the time, I'm like 29 again. I said, well, what if a guy comes in that's like 60? He says, oh, he goes, you do old man falls. And I looked at him and I said, old man falls? And he said, yeah. I said, Sensei, what's old man falls? And then he showed me. And basically, it was where you do this small rollout. So you don't fly through the air and take the big fall. You just kind of sit and roll with it. And I just kind of remember sitting there going, duh, like, oh, okay. So again, I was lucky that I asked those questions when I was young in Japan and I got good answers. So then, as people in my dojo, as we all got older, like I still have, and I still can too. I can still take the big falls, and so can a bunch of my guys in New York. But I've really gotten on them and said, okay, but you got to start transitioning because if you take that one bad fall, now you've got a problem, right? So they're slowly now transitioning to taking the old man falls, right? And what people don't realize is by doing that transition, you're able to keep training. You're not getting hurt all the time. You're not now where you get hurt and now you're like, oh my God, am I going to go down in the dojo tonight and get hurt again? And then before you know it, you're not going to the dojo, right? So I think part of it too, is instructors don't know enough,
I agree. I agree.
you know?
I had a guy come over to fix the electrics here about 3 weeks ago, and he saw. I apologise for the place being messy, and he noticed that the mess is all martial arts gear.
Okay.
Uh, well, the guy played Australian rules football,
Okay.
which it's so big in Melbourne that it's in every school, everything, and because it's so big, because this guy's a mature age guy, he's the same age as me. He's in a team where everybody is between 55 to 65. And that team is in a league of maybe 18 teams of guys from 55 to 65. And one of my apologies to him was I told him how I'd been excessively tired, etc. And I didn't mean to make him my sports coach or anything. And he said, mate, your problem is that you've overtrained. Don't they teach you this? And I said, well, no, it's because martial arts in Melbourne, although it's huge, it's not like Australian rules football.
Right. Of course.
So
Right.
he was able to tell me about the rest breaks you've got to take, this and that. And he's told me, oh, you're going to be in trouble for the next couple of months. Stick with it.
Right.
And this is a guy who is a sportsman, but he's in a much more popular sport. AFL is so huge here. The football is just it's like NFL in America.
But again, I'm sure with those guys in that age, that league, that where they're playing, they're older guys playing, I'm sure they've made tremendous adjustments too, right? So what? Because those guys all have jobs. They don't want to get hurt. So
Yeah.
I'm sure they're adjusting the way they play the game because they've gotten older. And we had in New York, my younger son was a professional baseball player for a few years and here in the States. And I remember one time he was going to play a game. This was before he became a pro. And I went to the field and there was a bunch of senior citizens playing baseball, hardball, like not like they were playing baseball. And so I started talking to these guys and they ranged in age from the 40s. The oldest guy was like 81. So like the guy that was 81, he couldn't run down the first base anymore. So when he hit, they had a pinch runner for him, right? And so but then I saw a guy who was like 73 pitching and I was like, "Holy crap, look at this guy," right? And you looked at them and one of the things I think people overlook that get to be our ages is the happiness factor. Meaning like it's not just about the physical. It's like I am very happy when I'm doing martial arts, whether I'm practicing by myself or whether I'm teaching, right? And I think anything that makes you happy keeps you young.
Yeah.
If you don't like something or something becomes a chore, and that's why I think it's so important to understand like what this guy was saying to you about how to train and to watch. And like even myself, like I still train, very hard. But sometimes what do? I overdo it, right? And then I wake up and my body feels like it's been through the ringer. So years ago, I would just train again that day. But now, if my body's that beat up, I say to myself, all right, today's a rest day. I shut it down. I let my body get itself back together. And then the next day, I go back to training again. And, I think for guys our age, what that guy was saying is important. Yeah, you're going to go through a period, especially when you first start, where your body's going to be telling you every day, we don't want to do this. We don't want to do
Yeah.
it, right? So
Yeah.
you've got to work till you get through that. And then once you get through it, then you start seeing the reward. And then what you have to do is you have to, once you start feeling pretty good, is not get too crazy. Because
Yeah.
you get too crazy, now you pulled something. Okay, now you're set back 6 weeks, right? So it becomes this fine line where you can train hard, but you got to train smart. So that's what we try to say now in the dojo, especially because like my New York school, which is still open, there's a lot of the senior people there are in their 60s, mid 60s to late 60s. They all move fantastic, right? So the thing is again, we say it all the time, Train hard, but train smart. Don't, and and some of my teachers too, and this is something I'm sure you might have experienced, and if you want to comment on this, is one of my Chinese masters says, do nothing that causes injury.
I wish
So,
I'd spoken to him.
right. So if you're training and they're having you do some type of training that's causing you to get hurt, that's a problem. And it's a huge problem in karate. So, like certain karate styles, you see a lot of people as they get older, they're getting hip replacement, knee replacement. You're seeing it in China now too. And my thing is if the martial arts are supposed to be healthy for you, why is it causing this damage to the body? And why aren't anybody taking a step back and saying, hey, maybe we need to take a look at how we do some things? So, so that's something also that I'm a big proponent of, which is if what we're doing is causing us to get injuries, we need to re-examine what we're doing and let's make it better, right? I mean, I'm all for tradition, but if that tradition is causing you to get a hip replacement, if it's causing me to get a knee replacement, I think we have a problem.
Oh, I agree. My injuries weren't caused in my school. They've all been to do with me trying to keep up with the class.
Right.
And where my mind vibe just was totally wrong is just going back to when I first started martial arts. When I started judo, you get the Judo Federation of Australia handbook, and it shows you you need to know these 8 throws and these 2 ground holds for your yellow belt. Then for your orange belt, I think it adds in a couple of chokes. For orange, yellow, orange, green, you might get a couple of arm locks, but it's always a set amount. You must know this. I believe karate, you must know a set amount. So in trying to do a set amount, you try to keep up with your fellow students. Now, there isn't actually a set amount at my school. This actually came out of my head. I'd like to say that my teacher is the greatest teacher I've ever had. So I'm not knocking my school, I'm knocking me. But other students at my school are looking at that sort of thing too. They think that there is a certain level you've got to get, because now I'm knocking students at my school, I shouldn't, but I'm ahead of some people that started before me, and they've gotten ahead of me because they're fitter, they learn more. It's hard. I learn more slowly than everyone else. So I benchmarked it from going to a number of schools, doing a lesson, seeing how much everybody else had learned. And I reckon I'm 20% slower at learning, but I still learn. So if somebody started after me and they've gotten ahead, they might have a little bit of resentment. Why is that guy on green and I'm on silver? I'm better than him. I know more. I can do the punches and the kicks better. So because we've got these ideas that it's a set amount, it can cause a few problems. For instance, when we have to go for the black, I'm still freaking. It's 2.5 years away from me, but you've got to do a 5K run followed by 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats. That's not the whole fitness test, but you're not allowed to take a break during it. And I'm looking at it thinking, maybe I'm never getting my black belt.
Yeah, I mean, for guys our age, that's tough, and frankly, it's a little dangerous. It's a little dangerous to have a requirement like that for people out now. Good, if you're an ultra marathoner or you're someone that's doing CrossFit all the time and you're in, amazing shape. But I think if you're a martial artist and that kind of thing's being put on you, I think it can cause problems. And the other thing I'll say too is like one of the things I talk about in my school is that I tell students when I'm thinking about promoting you or testing you, I'm not comparing you to the student that's sitting next to you. I'm only comparing you from where you've progressed from. It's your personal progression. So it's never compared to someone else. So like maybe, like you said, like maybe someone in the school who's in his 50s, he gets promoted to the same rank, but the other one kid is 17. Now, obviously, he's faster, he's moving, whatever, right? He's more fit, but it's not about the comparison to the young guy. It's about, well, you started here and you've worked hard and now you've gotten to here. And that's the way I was trained to have people progress in the school. And I think the comparison, even I tell students in the school, don't worry about the guy next to you. You just worry about you. If you worry about you, you'll be fine. If you start worrying about him or who's on this side of you and why aren't I getting promoted or why, isn't he getting promoted and why just start him on this thing and I haven't started on that yet? Like I tell people all the time, you have to trust me, right? I'm the teacher, right? Trust me. I know what I'm doing. I'll get you there, right? But yeah, like so something like that I think is tough. I mean, because you're talking 2.5 years away. We'll be almost 63 years old by that point.
That's another reason that got me into a lot of the trouble. And that all is just from my head alone.
Right.
I thought, I'm getting older each year. I better get there quickly while I can. And I've realized there are no shortcuts. You can't get there more quickly. But I will end up doing another article to follow up martial arts over 50. I'll write one for Tao Mag, martial arts over 60, and point out all of the new mistakes I've made. I don't mind if I look a bit silly for having made them, because every time I make a mistake, I'll go online and I'll start researching stuff. There's some great sports clinics out there. Harvard's got a lot of information up there. That sort of information might be more available to something bigger like Australian rules football.
Right.
But I don't think it's filtering through in the local clubs.
Right. Well, the other thing too is, you say you've made these mistakes, but I think when you write one of these articles, I'm betting there's a lot of people reading it that are saying, "Oh, I did the same thing." So I think, again, I think then people have like a common cause and realize, "Oh, I'm not the only person that maybe misunderstood this or didn't understand it the way I thought I did." Right. And look, here's another guy that's mentioning the same things. Now I don't feel so bad. So, I think that's a good thing. I never think it's a bad thing. And I think again, questioning how we do things, I think is extremely important. And that's one of the things that's a bit of a problem in the martial arts, in that a lot of instructors don't want you to question anything they're doing. And, for me, I tell my students, you can ask as many questions as you want, right? And you should ask questions. And I say all the time, I'm sure there's something I'm teaching you wrong. And after I'm gone, hopefully one of you young bucks will one day wake up and say, oh my God, that Calandra sensei guy, he screwed that up. That wasn't correct what he taught us. And I've done the research and I think we should do it this way. And if he's correcting it, God bless. That's what you want. You want the arts to progress. So, some of these things we've done and some of these ideas we have, I think, about what the martial arts entails. And, sometimes some of these heavy fitness requirements and different things, I just don't know that, like, I don't have anything like that. And I've never been put through anything like that in any of my, and I'm very fit. I mean, I do kettlebell, I'm very fit. So, but again, again too is like, do you have a real job?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I've worked 9 to 5 and then it's a rush. I get home from work. I've got 45 minutes just to get myself ready. And it's a 15-minute walk to
Right.
the dojo. So
Right.
my dojo is, thank God, it's around the corner.
Right.
But then you get home from martial arts and you've got a very short amount of time to try to have a shower, cook, eat,
Right.
do anything.
Right.
And currently that's actually a bit hard for me because of the overtraining, because I actually need more than 8 hours sleep at the moment. So I'm ditching one lesson a week. Well, I've cut back from 10 and a half hours training a week to 5. And from the 5, I'm actually ditching the Wednesdays sometimes.
So let me ask you a question about that. So you cut back on the amount of classes you're attending. How do you feel physically?
uh, I'm slowly getting better each week. I've just got to get over this overtraining bit.
Right.
Um, Actually, just to go back to something you were saying before, you're saying your students can ask you any questions. My teacher's the same. The reason that I'm writing the articles is because the students don't know the questions to ask. I didn't know any of this stuff.
Right.
I didn't know the questions to ask. Every promo article that I read about somebody getting their black belt at 73 or whatever, it was fluff. You know, basically they're just promoting. I suppose I've got relatives that have gotten their black belts in their 60s. My cousin Michael just got his, I think he's 63. So, and his wasn't an easy one.
Right.
People don't turn around and say, hey, I'm silly. I made this mistake. I made that mistake. They don't want to admit to it. So they just pretend like, hey, I worked hard. I got there. What I'm saying is I worked hard. I fell in a hole so many times. I'm writing up the things that I've done wrong, and hopefully I can work out why I did them wrong, and maybe that will be of help to you. But that's not actually what the documentary is about. The documentary is about a lot of mature age students, like my cousin, who have gone back to martial arts and have achieved, and a number of medical professionals who do martial arts that have said what the benefits are. So to let people know, like the guy that I met on the tram, you can go back and do martial arts. Maybe the kids have left home, right?
Right.
You stopped because you had to go to university, you got married, you wanted to get ahead in your job, time goes by. Now the kids have left home and you're saying, boy, I never did that, but it was for young people. So I'll give that a miss. And I'm saying, no, you can actually do it. The articles are about, hey, these are the things to avoid doing.
Yeah, no, it's important because I just had a student, I've known him since he's 12. Um, he joined the military. He's 53. So, he joined the military. So traveled around, now lives in Alabama. Stopped training, probably when he was like 16 or 17, right before he went in the military. So he hasn't trained all these years. But we're very close to him. So he's been out here for the holidays, and so we're very close, like family. But he started having some health problems. He let himself go, so he put on a lot of weight. Um, you know, Not a healthy lifestyle, right? So my wife's a doctor, and he called her, and she didn't talk to him like a patient. She talked to him like a family member. Basically, read him the riot act. Okay, and he said, well, do you have any good news? And she said, yeah, if you do what I tell you to do, you'll live. And if you don't, you're going to die. Right. So then I gave it about 15 minutes and I called him. And I said, look, I'm making a one-time offer. I'm never bringing up this subject again. You need to finish what you started. You can train via Zoom. You get back, you train, you get back your skill, you get yourself in better shape. I'll help you get in shape. I'll help you with your diet. I'll help you with everything. And you make black belt. You set a goal. Your goal is to make black belt in karate. And I think one of the things there was he didn't have a goal. Like he's going to work, he's coming home. He's going to work, he's coming home. Well, what's the extra thing? Like, what's that thing that we're trying to accomplish? Is it, I want to hike the Grand Canyon? Is it I want to climb Mount Everest, right? So I said to him, though, I said, but you think about it, but I'm never bringing it up again. And 2 days later, he called me and said, I want to start. And so it's been over a year. He was out here not too long ago for a month, training here every day. He's lost over 30 pounds, much healthier, and he's on a good path. And, you're talking about, getting back to it after you've been away from it for a long time. He's a prime example. And, I see the change in him. And this is why, martial arts can be a great thing if it's done right.
Oh, for
Um,
sure.
you know,
You
it,
reminded me of a story
go ahead,
from when
tell
I
me.
was Well, when I was doing judo, when I did judo from about 13 to 16 and a half. So
Okay.
it's not that long, but during that time, there was a boy that started doing judo with the kids who his disability was extreme. Judo is one where you've got to have very strong legs,
Yeah.
and his
Yeah.
was in the legs. He could take 3 steps, and I never asked him what it was. I just became friends with him. I've never felt comfortable asking somebody unless they actually start talking
Okay.
to me about it. So his legs were always really bent, and he'd hobble 3 steps and fall over. Anyway, when I got into the state squad, I decided to keep doing the judo with the kids because he'd become a good friend and he was just looking up to me a lot and that. But I ended up stopping doing judo, and that actually was because of family problems. I got kicked out of home as a kid, you know.
Right.
So from having worked at Safeway as a trolley boy and earning my own money and going to judo, suddenly everything was different.
Right.
But I bumped into this guy on a tram. You know, he was probably 22, 23 years old now. He was walking, still hobbled down, but the steps to get onto the trams in the old days, they're pretty big.
Right. Right.
So he went from being able to take 3 steps only to being a young man that can get around on his own and not ask for any help. So I really didn't think much of that story until you just mentioned it. But I'm talking about martial arts for mature age students. Yes, martial arts can be actually very helpful
Yeah.
for lots of people.
Lots of people. Lots of
Yeah,
people.
nobody has an excuse not to do it. I do martial arts with a guy that's 80.
Yeah.
I think now he's 81 or
My
82.
my karate sensei in Okinawa is 85. My Katori Shintaro sensei in Japan is 85.
Yeah.
Um, my Katori Shintaro teacher teaches 5 days a week. Okay, my karate sensei, right now he's having a leg problem, so he's not teaching, but he was teaching 3 days a week. A lot of my sensei are a little older, right? They're all very active. So, my sword sensei, Sugino sensei in Japan, every time I see him, I'll be seeing him in this October. But every time I see him, I have a bad knee, born with it, so it's not from martial arts, right? Martial arts doesn't help it, but that it didn't cause it. But we talk about our various aches and pains. But he's 85, and I'm still relatively young compared to him. But he always leans into me and says to me, Michael, never stop moving. And, I always tell my students this, that, things my teachers say. And when I was we hosted the World Championships in London, myself and one of my students back in 2019. And my karate sensei came from Okinawa. So at the time, he was about 80, just pushing 80. So I'm sitting down with him at lunch. I said, so Sensei, what have you been doing since you got to London? And he says, this morning I went out and I took a jog to the right. And I'm saying to myself, by yourself? He goes, yeah. So he's jogging through the streets of London by himself. He's 80 years old. Now he moves like you'd never think he was 80. But here's a guy, right, who's 80 and he's going out for a run. And I said, well, what are you going to do? He says, well, tomorrow I'm going to go out and I'm going to run in the other direction. Right.
Yeah.
But he's happy, right? And he's physically fit. And so seeing these older teachers can be quite inspiring. And if you have an older person in the dojo, it can be quite inspiring. I mean, even, I'm the sensei, so I'm the so-called big kahuna in the dojo, right? But if you've got a person that's, in their mid 70s or if they're 80 and they're training and they're showing up every week and they're putting effort in, I mean, you got to look at yourself and say, well, I have no excuses. Like I'm 60, I have no excuses. Like I should be putting the work in. And, I think that's a big important thing, right? But again, I think it's got to be where at a pace that they can train and continue to train, not that they're pushed too hard. And now they start having doubts about, okay, can I do this? I'm getting hurt too much, or I'm waking up on too sore. Like I tell anybody older that joins the school, I say, listen, if you're gonna, you wake up tomorrow and you feel a little muscle sore, that's okay. If you wake up tomorrow and you're having trouble walking, okay, you got to tell me because you did too much and we got to dial it back. So I constantly monitor. And I'll give you a funny story. When I was a young teacher, I was in my 20s. Okay. I had two guys that to me looked old, but they were probably in their 30s, right? And maybe
Yeah.
40s, right? And they come in and they're taking a trial class and they're throwing the kicks really hard. And I'm like, guys, slow down. Don't throw the kicks that hard. Like, no, we run marathons. This is what they tell me. And even back then I said to them, I said, well, running a marathon and using your muscles like this, very, very different. I said, so slow down. And they just kept. And the next night they walked in and they were limping. And I said, what's going on? They go, yeah, oh, we're not going to join. We could barely walk. And I looked at him. I said, well, did I not tell you to slow down? And like, yeah, you did, but we do. I said, yeah, I don't care. You do marathons. They're two very different things. You're using your muscles in a very, very different way. And trying to do it as hard as you did the first night, you hurt yourself. And now you're thinking, well, I'll hurt myself every class. But if you'd done what I told you, which is slow down and don't throw the kick so hard, you would have been fine. So again, people can also be their own worst enemy. They think because, oh, I'm fit, I do this other type of exercise. And then they go into the dojo and they think, oh, well, I'm fit. I'm a power lifter, or I'm a rugby player, or I'm an Australian football guy. Okay, well, those are different muscles. Now you're going to, and now the first night they wake up the next day and, oh, this hurts and that hurts because they went too hard, right? So I think sometimes that can also be a problem where we believe we're in better shape than we think we are, or we believe we're prepared for something when in reality we're not.
I found that problem with people from other schools, not knocking the other schools,
Right.
but my teacher tells us, do it slowly and get it correctly, and he'll actually break down the movements.
Right.
And yeah, you see how you've got to swivel the foot, open the hips, get your knee up to a certain height. And it makes sense. You're looking to get the muscle memory.
Right.
I read somewhere it takes 350 repetitions just to create the neural pathway. Well, I'm learning a lot slower than other people, so it might take me 700. And it takes 10,000 to make it second nature.
Right.
So I've been at places because there's some open mats around Melbourne where people from all different schools come in. And someone will come in and they'll kick the pad when I'm holding it and knock me across the room. And think, what the hell are you doing that for? Are you trying to show off? And then I'll start looking, and despite the fact that they're a black belt, I'm thinking, you're going to hurt yourself. You're not actually opening up the hips. If you don't do it this way or that way over 10, 20, 30 times, you're going to end up with a sore knee. And, they'll be in their karate suits, and then you'll see they've got a knee brace on or whatever. They think it's all about the power. If it comes down to the power, I do Muay Thai with this guy. He's huge, and he's just new. And he just puts his hands up like that and does that because he hasn't yet learned how to do the jab.
Right.
That little punch knocks me across the room because he's a big guy.
Right.
I'm fine with him doing that. He's open and he's going to end up learning to make that punch more powerful. And he's just going to be amazing, Right. But it's not about the power. It's getting it right so that whatever you're doing, your power will be greater without actually injuring yourself and getting the most out of your own body.
Well, the power should be an effortless power. So in the beginning, nothing's effortless, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't know how to move. So we're everything we're putting effort in, right? But as you go up the levels, the power should become effortless. I mean, and my thing is like if I was there and I saw the guy kicking the pad like that, like I'd say to him, and he's knocking you across the room, I'd say to him, well, a guy, cut back on the power. Like in my dojo, like sometimes an older person's holding the pad and a young person's going to lay in. I'm like, okay, adjust your power. And they know, oh yeah, this person's 70. I can't kick as hard as I can. I'm going to bang them off the wall or hurt them, right? So I think too that that's an important part of the training. Like, so if you have more power, well, okay, I'm working with someone that's not as powerful. So now I have to cut back a little bit. I have to adjust so this person feels comfortable when I'm training with them, not that they feel like, I'm hurting them or going real hard on them, right? And I think sometimes that's part of the ego issue, right?
Yeah.
The ego issue,
Also, part of the club issue. I've never been hurt at my club.
right?
Um, I mean, the reason why I cross train is because when I first started doing judo, well, it was actually when I got into the state squad. I wasn't a member of the state squad as that I went out and was with them. I was in the training, and that meant that I could qualify for state squad if I did well enough. And the first thing that the guy said, his name was Arthur Moorehead, and he was the Olympic judo coach. He said, I want you to go off and train at other schools just once a week, and don't stay any longer than 3 months because I don't want to lose you from judo.
Right.
But he said, keep doing that. So for 3 years, I went off to different clubs all of the time. So in my head, cross training is normal. A lot of the students at my school don't because there's more than enough lessons. It's very hard to do them all. But I still go off and so I do Muay Thai at my school, but I do Sunda at Melbourne University. And I think the cross training is important, getting to know other people, feeling you're part of the community.
So I
But it's
so
only been at other places they ever got hurt.
so again, myself, like I teach six martial arts. So and I'm a direct student of most of the headmasters of those arts.
Oh my God.
And I've taught those arts for a long time. So like in my New York school, there's a few people that only do one art, but that's rare. Usually people are doing two or three. There's a few, people like me, they're a little crazy that may do all six, right? Out here in Arizona, I'm teaching five right now. I'm not teaching the sixth one. So there's a few people that, there's nobody that's doing all of them yet, but eventually that will happen. There's a bunch that are doing three or four. So I think all the early masters of martial arts all cross-trained. Nobody had just one teacher. Okay. And again, like the founder of our style of karate, Ishinru, he added weapons into the system, Kobudo. And he would tell people, listen, if you really want to get good at the Kobudo, you should train with a Kobudo master. He goes, I'm not a Kobudo master. My Kobudo's good. Like I can teach you good Kobudo. But if you really want to learn Kobudo, train with someone who's an expert in it, right? And, so I totally agree with the cross training. And I even think it's a good idea to train under other instructors in the art you do, as long as those instructors have something to offer. My teacher in Okinawa, when I first went there in 1991, he told me that I should go out and train with everybody that's better than me, and I should make my own strong Ishinru karate. And he said, and he pointed to himself, here's the headmaster of the art. He says, if I do things you like, by all means, do them. If there's some things I do you don't like, then don't do them. And you should do this and travel and train with all different teachers and do this. And that's what I did. So initially I did it within the Ishinru karate world. So I trained with as many of the students of his father as I could find. And then eventually, as I was training in other arts, I saw certain things in those arts that made sense, that helped me in terms of that art. And then there was certain things that helped that art from the karate. So like in the jiu-jitsu I do, we have strikes. So
Yeah.
obviously the striking power from karate helped the jiu-jitsu, but we do throws and joint locking in karate. Obviously the joint locks in the jiu-jitsu is more serious. So that came back into the karate, helping the karate. So I agree 100%. I'm always suspect of the guy who runs the school who says, I'm the only guy that can teach you anything. I know everything you need to learn. No one else can show you what I can show you. As soon as people start saying that kind of thing, my eyes kind of glaze over and I immediately start thinking, okay, yeah, this place wouldn't be for me. So,
yeah.
so
I think
cross
some
training is so important.
teachers, yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I think
No.
some teachers are afraid they're going to lose their students to another school. I can't actually imagine leaving my main school. Um, when I was at Caulfield Judo Club, I trained other places, but I always came back to Caulfield Judo Club. And as far as I was concerned, that was my school, the only
Right.
one. Now I'm doing Kung Fu. Six Harmonies Kung Fu is my only school. But yeah, I can understand it. If you've got to pay for a dojo and all of the equipment and the rent and everything, you still know that you've got a business. So it's a balancing act, and I'm totally all for that. That a school needs to take in the commercial
Right.
considerations as
Of
well.
course.
So yeah, they don't want you. They don't want to risk you leaving.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that, but I also think a school that tries to exert too much control will make you leave eventually.
Oh yeah, yeah. Especially if there's a hierarchy of some sort socially,
Right.
and it turns into a cult. I had that bad experience with the karate place when I was around 20, which, if that hadn't happened, I think I might have actually returned at 20. And then I wouldn't be talking about coming back as a mature age student.
Right. Yeah.
It's rare,
Yeah.
but it happens.
I've seen some things like I've seen some martial arts schools where they do a chant, a group chant at the beginning, but not a Gregorian chant. They're
Yeah.
chanting and saying words like we're a black belt school and these different things. And I remember the first time I heard this, I literally said to myself, this is a little too cult for me. This is too much cult-like behavior. And do you know who Oscar Ratti is?
No, no.
So Oscar Ratti wrote one of the seminal works on martial arts, and it's an early work. He wrote a book called Secrets of the Samurai. Okay.
I've
It's
heard of the book.
Yeah. So I was friends with him. I have one of his paintings in my house. I have one of his drawings because he did all the drawings for the book. I have one of his drawings here in the my school. And when I first met Oscar, I had met an Aikido sensei, and when I met him, I was introduced to him that I was a jiu-jitsu sensei. So he asked me, "Well, what type of jiu-jitsu do you teach?" And when I told him, he didn't believe me. The Aikido sensei was older, and he was like, "No, that's a very ancient style of Japanese jiu-jitsu. I don't believe you're teaching that." I said, "Well, okay, I don't really care what you believe." Like, again, what am I supposed to do? I'm going to force him to believe me. So he said, "Well, could I come to the school?" I said, "Sure, everybody's welcome to come to the school." So this older Aikido sensei came, and he couldn't believe what I was teaching. He's like, "Oh my God, you're teaching a real classical ancient system of jiu-jitsu." I said, "Yeah." I said so. So this guy was from Texas. So he left, and he came back. He called me. He said, "Mike, I'm in town again. I'd like to come visit the school. Can I bring a friend?" And I said, "Sure." And he walked in with this elderly gentleman with a hat on. Looked like my grandfather, right? A big smile on his face. And the instructor, his name was TK Lee. He turns and says, "Mike, I'd like you to meet Oscar Ratti." And I froze and just looked at him and I said, "The Oscar Ratti?" And he looked at me and he started laughing. He says, "Yeah, I'm Oscar Ratti." I said, "The person that wrote Secrets of the Samurai and Aikido in a Dynamic Sphere?" And he goes, "Yeah." I says, "Oh my God, it's a pleasure to meet you. I have your books and whatever." And he said, "TK tells me that you teach an ancient style of jiu-jitsu." Now, in Secrets of the Samurai, he mentions the style I teach. So he says, "Can I just watch?" I said, "Sure." And so he watched and he said to me, he goes, "I've got to tell you, you've restored my faith a little bit in martial arts because you just bowed the class in and you guys started training." And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "So he was invited to the New York Key Society, which is a branch of Aikido.
Yeah.
And they asked him to come and give a lecture." Now, he studied Aikido for years. There's video of him doing an Aikido demonstration on my channel at the New York World's Fair in 1962.
God.
And he told me he went to watch a class, but he didn't tell them who he was. Most people have never seen him, so they don't know what he looks like. So he went and sat in and watched the class. And he said at the beginning of the class, they were doing a mantra to chi. And he sat there and he goes, what is this? Like he's thinking, what is this? This isn't the Aikido I did. Like, this is like a cult. Like you're doing a mantra to chi? Like, so he left and they called him and they said, so, you willing to come in and do the lecture? He says, no, no, I'm going to pass. And he told me he had gotten very turned off to martial arts by some of that behavior he was seeing in the Aikido world. And then when he came to see me, he said it kind of restored his faith that there were still people out there doing real, as he put it, real martial arts. And we became friends, and I would have lunch with him. Like I said, I'm lucky enough I own one of his paintings. I have some of his drawings. Um, but yeah, I mean, the martial arts is great as long as it doesn't go off on a certain tangent. When it goes off on a tangent, it can be really bad. And
Oh
that's
yeah.
another thing I think people need to watch and be careful of, whether you're young or old, that, this thing that, we're just guys that do martial arts. Like I said to one of my students one time, I said, she said to me, what we do is very important. And I said, well, it's important to us. Like you like martial arts, I like martial arts. Okay. Okay. It's important to us. Most people in the world think what we do is crazy, that we put these uniforms on and we go down and do these weird moves and we swing these old ancient weapons. And most people in the world look and go, why would you waste your time doing that? Right. But we like it. So it's important to us. The problem is when people that do what we do um, start placing an over importance on certain things that I think can sometimes lead to a dark side of things that's not healthy, both whether it's physical health or mental health. So that I think is an important thing that people should realize too, especially older people too, because listen, there's con men and everything, right?
Pardon?
There's con men and everything, scam artists, guys that try to take.
Oh, like the back of the comic books when I was a kid,
Yeah, yeah,
Dante and the Black
yeah,
Dragon
yeah.
Society.
You know, the person's older and now they're getting roped into something where the sensei saying, well, you really need to pay me this or you need to buy this, it could be a problem. So I think martial arts can be a great vehicle, but I also think you always have to go in um, with your eyes open. And one of the things I always say when I teach a seminar, and I've taught seminars all over the world, one of the things I say is when we start the seminar, I say, okay, did you leave your common sense in the car or did you bring it in with you? I said, because if you left it in the car, go out and get it because this is going to be a common sense seminar. So you need your common sense. All right. And I've seen seminars and I've seen instructors do things and teach things that really bordered on a strange thing. And I try to avoid that with the plague. But so is the documentary finished?
Oh, it will be finished. It's
Okay.
actually finished in the shooting. It's
Okay.
just the editing.
Okay.
So what we're trying to do is we're going to try to have it up on YouTube by the end of August.
Okay.
If I end up having to ask for another edit, then because the editor's going overseas for a couple of weeks, then it'll
Okay.
be delayed by a few
Okay.
weeks. But I'm certainly going to promote it everywhere. If you're in Australia, the chances are high that it'll go on Channel 44 and Channel 31 because they've shown virtually every film I've made to
Okay.
date.
Okay.
And this one really fits more into what community TV is than previous films I've done.
Okay. So what are some of the previous films you've done?
Oh, well, I've mainly made horror
Oh,
and
okay.
schlock movies.
Okay.
So during the lockdowns, we made toxic alien zombie babes from outer space
Okay.
and badass bunyip.
Okay.
And Gerardo, the guy that edits these, he said to me, I don't want to make horror. He
Right.
said he loves making the films, but
Right.
when he went to take the photos for Martial Arts Over 50, he came up with the idea. He said, I want to do a documentary on this because he could see me there. He could see a few other guys that are around my age. I mean, they might be 10 years younger, but they're not 20-year-olds.
Right.
And he can see everyone bucketing with sweat.
Right.
And he just said, David, you survived cancer and what you're doing, it's amazing. And he said, I want to do a documentary. I was actually against it.
Okay.
Um, I thought nobody's going to watch this. It was when we were on the tram and that first guy started going on. I mean, it wasn't even the guy on the tram. After we got off the tram, I was talking to Grace. That's my girlfriend. She does Wing Chun and I do Shaolin.
Okay.
And I was just saying to her, I can't get the moves for, this form that we're doing. I keep getting stuck. It's not
Right.
like she could help me, but sometimes you just won't stop asking questions. So I
Right.
just stopped and we were in Chinatown. And I said, all right. And I start doing all of the moves, right? I didn't even look up. And I'm probably about 8 moves down the track. And I've got guys coming up to me that are all mature age. Oh, can you show me?
Right.
And next thing I'm showing them the
Right.
form that I can't even get down. I could show them maybe 8 or 10 moves.
Right.
And they all had a story, they're all
Right.
showing off old tattoos saying, I used to do Kung Fu. Look, I've got a dragon tattoo on my
Right.
leg.
Right.
And I looked around and I thought, oh my God, there's like 50 people there all filming and taking photos. I didn't put on a show. Believe me, I can't get down low enough on the forms. I'm not poetic. I'm not great. I probably look like Frankenstein. But having all of these older guys coming up and talking about it, saying, oh, they wish they'd gone back, I just thought, you know what, Gerardo is right. We've got to make this
Yeah.
documentary
Yeah.
because in the space of like an hour of talking about it, we've just got people coming out of the woodwork. So let them see that older guys do it.
Yeah.
Let them hear interviews from teachers that teach older guys, from I shouldn't even say guys. I would have had women in it too. Grace is in it. She's
Right.
over 40. So I really should have approached more women in it, but we just got to a point where it's taken too long. Let's wrap it up. We've got
Right.
enough material.
How long you think it'll be? How long you think it'll run?
Gerardo wanted an hour, so he'll get his
Okay.
way. He's
Okay.
the editor,
Okay.
which means 54 minutes for television.
Okay.
I wanted a half an hour to keep it snappy,
Okay.
but he's edited something like 70 of my films so far.
Yeah.
So
I think an hour is good. I think an hour is good. And like I said, so what you'll have to do is when it comes out and when it's available on your YouTube channel, you'll have to send me the link. And then what I'll do
definitely,
is I'll share it on all the martial arts pages I'm part of, and I'll announce it on my YouTube channel with where you can. I'll put out a post to all my subscribers, which we just passed 14,300. So, so what's happening with this channel is kind of interesting. Like you reached out for me. And you're not the first guy to reach out for me, but you're the first guy that reached out for me where I said, "Oh yeah, this is something I think will be good." Right. So when you reached out and you told me what it was about, I asked the boss, my wife. I bounce it off her, right? I said, "Hey, Lisa, this guy just reached out to me and he's doing a documentary on this subject." I said, "He wants to come on the channel. What do you think?" She goes, "I think that's good." I says, "Yeah, I do too. I think it's good for people to hear. None of us are getting any younger. And maybe some people will watch it and see it and decide, hey, you know what? I can give that martial arts a try. It's always something I wanted to do. Now, if these two guys, if this guy's still doing it and this guy got back into it at a later age, well, why can't I do that? So I think it's good. And once it comes out, any way I can help to push it, I will. I mean, I'm on a lot of martial arts pages on Facebook. So I'll be able to share it around. And I think there'll be some interest. Obviously, like I said, I'll do it through the channel too. What's happening with the channel is this is becoming a vehicle for more serious martial arts people. So I'm interviewing authors of books because again, if you think about it, where does the author of a martial arts book get to go to promote his book? There's nowhere. Like the morning talk shows aren't having a guy who's writing a book on martial arts on their talk show. So so now the podcast, like next week I'm interviewing an author. Uh, you know, so it's interesting what it's becoming and what's happening with it, and now how people want to come on the channel. And it's good because I get to talk to interesting people. So for me, right, like I tell
Yep.
people all the time, I don't care if people like that I had you on. I enjoyed talking to you, right? And so that's why I'm doing it, right? And
Oh,
I want
this
to,
one's the least controversial of anything that I've done.
yeah, yeah,
It's quite popular, and I'm hoping that basically anybody that runs a school, they can just grab the documentary for themselves. They can chop up bits of it and use it to promote their school.
right.
Because I believe America is similar to Australia, where we've got an aging population.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, they keep talking about generation this, boomer generation, generation X. I don't know anything about generations. I just know there's more of us getting up there closer to retirement
Right.
age. I could so easily have let the dream go if I hadn't ended up in this strange little place down a lane in Chinatown, like 3 steps up in a gold rush building with everybody Chinese, with Chinese dragons and letting off crackers and
Right.
worshipping strange idols up the back doing this. Actually, that's probably a story in itself. But yeah, if it hadn't been for the wackiest crap in the world, I never would have walked into a dojo and said, I want to do Kung
Right.
Fu.
Right. But again, I say one of the things I say about martial arts, if you practice it properly, it's an elixir for a long, healthy life. And it
Oh,
really is.
yeah.
It really is. So I appreciate you coming on. I really do. If you future projects, you do anything, you want to come on, you want to talk about it, you'll always have a place here to come on and talk about it. Like I said, once the documentary is finished and it's a go, you'll give me the info and I'll share it on the channel. I'll share it on all the Facebook pages I'm on, and hopefully a lot of people will look at it and maybe you'll get some feedback and maybe some people will suggest some other documentaries that you may decide you want to do. I mean, that's what happens here. I mean, I'll do a topic and then I'll get an email from someone and say, hey, Mike, I love that podcast. Could you talk about this? And I'm like,
Well, I'll tell
oh,
you what my
you know,
follow up I want to do.
sure.
I want to, this is if you're open to it, I wouldn't mind doing an interview for Tao and Martial Arts Lifestyle magazine.
Okay.
I don't, I've gone through most of the issues. There's like 24 back issues. I've been
Okay.
through it, and I don't think the media has been covered, because martial arts media is so important. It was picking up Black Belt magazine as a
Right.
kid.
Right.
We used to have news agencies. You walked in and there's like martial arts
Right.
magazines.
Right.
It's the media that really kept me going. Also, as a kid, I don't know what people do nowadays. I'm glad to have discovered your podcast. Although I do, if I'm allowed to mention people you might think are competitors, I do watch Jesse the Karate
Oh,
Kid,
sure. You can, I mean,
and
listen.
I watch Master Wong.
Okay.
Yeah, he teaches Wing Chun, and
Okay.
he's just got a huge. So covering the media for and finding out from yourself about how it all fits in and what you want to do. If I can do I mean, the interview I just do via a Word document,
Right.
but if I can do an interview that goes out in the magazine, that would be brilliant.
Yeah. 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 That would be great. So, but yeah, I mean, it's important that, this, like I said, this little podcast started as one thing and now it's kind of morphed into something else, right? Um, and now I almost feel like I have a responsibility here where I want to promote the guys that are doing good work, and to do a serious work. So I'm not interested in my channel. Like Jesse does a lot of funny things, and I think there's a place for that, and I think it's great. And I think a lot of the stuff he does is fun, and I like it. But for me, that's not my interest. So my interest is more of people doing, serious work. Like I'm interviewing a guy in the next couple of weeks who just wrote a very detailed biography of one of the karate pioneers on Okinawa. The guy traveled to Hawaii, to California, to Okinawa, to Japan to interview family members. I mean, he did a real biography. So he's going to be coming on. And that's what I want. I want it to be a vehicle where people come on. So, again, down the road, yeah, anything you want to do, just let me know. And like I said, I appreciate you coming on, and hopefully you'll come on again in the future when you do some other project. All right. So
I
thanks
would
a lot.
love to.
All right. All right.
Thanks
Take
for
care.
having me on your show.
Thank you. Hope you enjoyed the interview with David Black. I enjoyed talking to him. We may work together in the future on some things. He's talking about, as you mentioned, some articles and stuff. So yeah, I mean, David reached out to me, and when I heard the subject, I thought it was great. And once I heard he was doing a documentary, I'm like, yeah, well, let's help this guy out. Let's see his documentary, and if it gives people some ideas, give some instructors for help people that come back to the dojo later in life, a little bit older, it'll be good, right? And we can all benefit from it. I will be interviewing Joe Swift this week, so that might be dropping next weekend. All right. Thomas Feldman, the author of the Itosu Anko biography and the current Yabu Kensu biography, hopefully the next few weeks. And there's a bunch of other people that will hopefully be interviewing. And then we'll get back to some of the other podcasts, including some where I do some demonstrations and things like that. So as always, please click the like button. Very important for the YouTube algorithm. If you're not a subscriber, subscribe. We're slowly creeping up to that 15,000 mark, which is our next goal. All right. Consider becoming a monthly member. Currently have about 125, maybe a little less monthly members. All right. Well over 100 videos there. Okay. So please think about that. And hope you enjoyed this one. And I'll see you in the next one. Take care.